Today on No Greater Love with Pastor Jeff Kramer.
I mean, if you've got something in there, if you've got a glaring scar of your past from failure, you know the head games that go on within this. That why nobody else may not know your story. It's like they impact you in such a way, and it's like it impacts your social interaction with other people. And it could be such a stigma here that it impacts what goes on the inside of your house. But I want you to understand that as a Christian, that God has something special and he's going to complete a work of healing within your life. And even though it might not happen in one given second or one given year, it is a process that goes on, and it is our humility that makes way for God to do that.
He showed his love, taking the cross for us. No greater love than innocent blood.
Welcome to No Greater Love with Pastor Jeff Kramer. Our study in Genesis picks up today with the story of Joseph. Throughout his life, we see a man who endured great difficulty and pain, even though he had a heart to follow and obey God. Whether it was being rejected by his brothers because of envy and jealousy, and having his family torn apart when they sold him into slavery, or being falsely accused by his boss's wife and getting thrown into prison because of it, Joseph always had the encouraging reminder that God was with him. Even in the midst of darkness and the depths of despair, he always trusted in the sovereign hand of God, knowing his love would never fail. At the end of his life, Joseph could confidently make the bold declaration to those who hurt him, "You intended to hurt me, but God intended it all for good. He brought me to this position so I could save the lives of many people." And now, here's Pastor Jeff as we continue our study through Genesis.
But I put a title on tonight's message that is partly driven from the text and partly driven from what the Lord has put upon my heart. And that is, healing happens in phases. Now, we can relate that to our life. Tonight, we're going to cover Genesis 43, 44, and 45, even if you have to read those chapters at home. But we will cover them tonight in some way. And so far, we've come through this study of Genesis, and man, we've learned a lot. We've seen a lot of practical application. We've been able to drill down and to capture God's heartbeat for why we have Genesis. I'll remind us of why in just a moment. But as we get near the end of this study, there are a few more scenes that play out. Okay, so from chapter 43 here, right through chapter 50, there are a few more scenes that are happening here. And as these things play out, they're happening through the natural relationships and the natural plan that God has set in motion. And so I want to bring you all the way back to the very beginning of Genesis in a few little bullet points, if you will, so that you can get the overarching thing here. Again, my aim in doing these midweek study, especially as we've restarted in Genesis, is just to give you that arc over the top of the scriptures so that you're not a Bible scholar, but you understand the big picture of what's going on. So very first thing is this. I want you to remember this. The big picture here in Genesis, very first thing is that God created the heavens and the earth. This is Genesis chapter 1 and 2. We see that. And it is so powerful for us to remember that if I can believe that very first line of the Bible, the rest of the Bible is no big deal for us. If we can understand what God has done, that he is the all-powerful creator, loving, personal God. There's nothing that is too hard for him. He created everything. And what he said about that is he said after in the creation of everything, he said it is good. And so we can take away and we can walk by faith starting right there. Now, the second thing here that we've learned in Genesis, again, just the arc over here is that man disobeyed God and sin entered the world. This is Genesis chapter 3. And in that, what took place? Well, fellowship with God was broken. Remember, Adam and Eve were put outside of the garden at that point. They were no longer in that place of fellowship with the Lord. And because of sin, because of the choices that Eve and Adam, or Adam and Eve, made, and that slithery work of Satan, if you will, as he got in there and deceived them, sin entered the world. Third thing is, in Genesis chapter 4, we see that sin is spread in Adam's family. And the kids that they had, Cain ends up killing Abel, his brother. And so the spreading of sin was taking place. The next chapter, Genesis chapter 5, we see that while sin spread inside of Adam's family, and Adam's family was growing and all that death spread to all mankind, again, in the successive centuries and stuff that came up, and the millennials that came up. It just spread, all mankind. And so we get to Genesis chapter 6, 7, and 8, and God took some action here, and that is that he destroyed the entire earth, all living things in the earth, and that was the flood. And he used one family, that was Noah. He used Noah to repopulate the earth after the flood. Noah and his sons, his daughter-in-laws, and so forth. Then we came up through Genesis chapter 9. And I guess that's the repopulation chapter that was going on there. So I should point you in that direction there. But then the next step that we see, and we're still in the middle of this, from Genesis chapter 12 all the way through Genesis chapter 50, we find that God, he selected Abraham to start the nation Israel. And we have learned in this Bible study here exactly, well, what is Israel? Where did Israel come from? And all of that. We learned that, it came through Jacob. That Jacob is the man that wrestled with God. God changed his name, no longer a heel catcher, but one that would be governed by God, Israel. And then Jacob had 12 sons. You and I refer to them as the patriarchs, or the 12 tribes of Israel, if you will. And so in Genesis chapter 12 through 50, we have four main characters that are really the dominant ones on the scene. We've got Abraham, we've got Isaac, we got Jacob, and we got Joseph. And right now, we're in the middle of seeing Joseph, the pinnacle of his life and everything that God is doing with him. And so the storyline here in the book of Genesis is just tapering down. And that's why we're marrying together, multiple chapters at a time here as we navigate through this. And so what we're going to see here tonight is that healing was still needed in the family, right? Because Joseph was sold off to human trafficking. He was shipped down into Egypt. He made his way, and he was purchased by Potiphar. And then, the accusations from Potiphar's wife about, he tried to rape me and all this stuff. They sent him to prison and everything that took place there. Long story short is that God's hand was on him the whole entire way. And that through the struggles from 17 to 30 years old, those 13 years of difficulty there, God was shaping this man. He was doing a work within this man because he had a plan. And his plan was not thwarted, even though the obstacles were there. This is something that you and I can take away from in our lives, recognizing that God has a plan. And even though we can become unhinged, or we can get derailed sometimes, and we can get sucker punched by Satan for sure, that God's plan is going to come to pass. We're assured of that within the scriptures, that whatever he has begun within us, he's going to be faithful to complete it until the day of Jesus Christ. And I hope that you recognize what that means. That means the rapture of the church, right? And so the rapture of the church, those that have died in the church, Peter, James, John, all the saints from all the way from when the church started all the way up to the present hour, right? All of those that have passed on in their bodies in the grave, and to those that are alive right now. So like if the rapture was to happen in 3 minutes from now, right? Us as we're alive here right now, we wouldn't precede all those saints that have gone before us. All of us together, that how God does that is reuniting a body that is in the grave, and then our bodies that are alive, man, quickly translating them in the rapture. How in the world is that going to happen? I have no clue. That's a miracle of God right before us happening out. But the work that he's doing, he will complete it until that time. Until the day of Jesus Christ, he's going to complete that work. And so we can rest confidently in knowing that he who began the good work in us will be faithful to complete that. And so this leads us into what we're doing here tonight, and that is healing happens in phases. And so while these 3 chapters are here, the chapters are quite redundant in the sense of I'm not gaining a lot of traction in the big picture story of what's going on. And so I would gloss over them this way. Chapters 43 through 45, and I would suggest to you this, is that as you read these chapters, what you're finding here is that the famine is still happening. That the dream that Pharaoh had, king over Egypt there, and he had this dream that there was going to be, 7 good years, 7 bad years. And Joseph is the guy that ends up interpreting that. At this stage of the game, they're 2 years into this famine. So the 7 good years are where they stocked up. That's all passed by. Now they're 2 years into a total of 7 years of the famine. This is the stage that we're at in Genesis 43. And so as Joseph, now he sits as governor over the top of Egypt, his brothers had come down. Jacob had sent the other brothers, the sons, and they came down. 10 of them came down. Benjamin remained with Jacob. Again, Jacob is Israel, right? The 12 tribes come from him, his 12 sons, okay? And Joseph is in Egypt. He's the governor. And so the 10 brothers, they come down. And they come down into Egypt, they come down to buy some food, and Jacob recognizes them, or excuse me, Joseph recognizes them. And what he ends up doing, I mean, can you really blame Joseph for what he does here? He gives these guys a hard time. He knows that wait a minute, these are my brothers. They haven't seen me in a while, and I'm speaking to them through an interpreter. And man, he starts jabbing at them in a way that a little brother, you can only imagine, or I can only imagine my little brother doing some of these things. It's like, dude, I'm going to smash you, knock it off, But this is Joseph, right? He's the dude in charge right now. And this is all in that component of the fulfillment of the dreams, plural, that God had given to him. He said that, man, your brothers are going to bow down before you. And indeed they are. They had showed up and they bowed down and calling him Lord, little L, and coming there to get food from him and everything. And so, Joseph ends up, he's sending them away. He called them spies. He says, okay, wait a minute. We're going to hold one of you guys in prison. So he ends up keeping Simeon, right? Simeon is a tough guy. He is one of the brothers that you remember when Dinah got raped earlier in the book. Simeon is one of those guys that went after those towns. And so he was a tough guy. He volunteered to stay back. He's held in prison until the rest of the brothers can go back up to Canaan to convince Jacob the dad to send little Benjamin, the very youngest son, and to bring him all the way back down, just to show that he's still alive and so forth. And so chapter 43 picks up in this lingering process. Jacob is mad. He's like, how could you guys tell them down there that there was still yet another son and all of this stuff? And so this is kind of the outflowing of what we see here in this. And so they take another trip down and they finally get down there and, they finally get another round of food and all of this stuff. And so we come to our very first idea, and that is humility makes way for healing. Let me read to you Genesis 43, verses 1 through 5. It says, now the famine was severe in the land, and it came to pass when they had eaten up the grain which they had brought from Egypt, that their father said to them, go back and buy us a little food. But Judah, he spoke to him. So Judah is one of the tribes, one of the sons, okay? One of the 12 sons. He spoke to Jacob, his dad, saying, the man solemnly warned us, saying that you shall not see my face unless your brother is with you. Who is the man that's giving the warning? This is Joseph, acting as governor down in Egypt. Okay, this is the second to the youngest brother. He's telling his brothers that, no, you're not going to see my face again unless you bring baby Benjamin back. And they don't know that this is their brother. Moving on, verse 4, it says, if you send our brother with us, we will go down and buy you food. But if you will not send him, we will not go down. For the man said to us, you shall not see my face unless your brother is with you. And Israel said, why did you deal so wrongfully with me as to tell the man whether you still had another brother? And then they said, well, the man asked us pointedly about ourselves and our family, saying, is your father still alive? Have you another brother? And we told him according to these words. Could we possibly have known that he would say, bring your brother down? And so you can see the struggle that is going on, right? This is Jacob. This is the guy that wrestled with God, and God renamed him Israel. Okay? I hope you're able to keep sync with all of these names and everything. We've had a long study so far in the sense of the weeks leading up to this. And so I'm just assuming at this point that you're able to apply your understanding here to remember some of the flow of the names that we've covered. But the internal struggle that is still happening within this family, Jacob as the father, as the head, he's still in this place. He has not learned how to wholeheartedly rely upon God. It's like his knee-jerk reaction is immediately to go to that place of fear and shut down. Emotionally, he goes to that place of fear and shut down. And maybe you're a person like that. Maybe you can relate really closely with what Jacob in his response has been every time an obstacle has come up through the scripture. Again, he's always thinks the worst. But you and I should understand, and we should capture this. We should understand that humility makes way for healing. And I want to divert just a little bit so that we can get into some application side of this thing and we can recognize this. So follow along, flip in your Bibles to 2 Kings if you can, chapter 5. If not, they may put a few of these verses on the screen here for us. But if you were in Genesis, just turn to your right. Okay, Genesis is the first book. And maybe if you look at my Bible up here, you're turning about that many pages to your right. Okay, and you're coming into 2 Kings chapter 5. Now, in 2 Kings chapter 5, as we work our way through this, we have a record of some of the things that have transpired in the history of Israel. And we come to another scene. This is a scene of application. And the application that we're looking at in this is that humility makes way for healing. And watch what happens in the middle of this story. New story. It says, now Naaman, commander of the army of the king of Syria, he was a great and an honorable man in the eyes of his master, because by him the Lord had given victory to Syria. He was also a mighty man of valor, but he was a leopard. So get that. Get the understanding of this. What we're dealing with right here is we got a guy that is he's a successful man, but he's in a desperate place. And that desperate place is that he has leprosy. And it puts him outside of the natural scope of maybe really close interaction with people. And you know what that looks like within your life. I mean, if you've got something in there, if you've got a glaring scar of your past from failure, you know the head games that go on within this. That why nobody else may not know your story. It's like they impact you in such a way, and it's like it impacts your social interaction with other people. And it could be such a stigma here that it impacts what goes on the inside of your house. But I want you to understand that as a Christian, that God has something special and he's going to complete a work of healing within your life. And even though it might not happen in one given second or one given year, it is a process that goes on, and it is our humility that makes way for God to do that. As the story goes on, look ahead to verse number 5. It says that the king of Syria, he told Naaman, he says, go now, and I will send a letter to the king of Israel. And so he departed, and he took with him 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 changes of clothes. Look to your neighbor and say, that's a lot of money. Okay, I just want you to recognize it for what it is. It's a lot of money. Okay, so Naaman here, he's a guy, again, he's a mighty man of valor, but he's a leper. He's got a problem. And now he's going to go down with letters from Syria. It is going to go down into Israel, and it's like, okay, you can heal me down there. Okay, somebody can heal me. So the king of Syria sends him down to the king of Israel here, and what is he trying to do? What's a picture behind this? He tried to buy his way out of his problem. You recognize that as self-sufficiency, okay? So he had a problem. It was leprosy. He was taking a bunch of money down to Israel because he wanted to be healed. There was this self-sufficiency that I'm going to level up. I'm going to do this. If you guys can just heal me, here it is. I'm going to give you something in exchange. Listen, that's not grace. That's not grace at all. That's you're earning something. And I want to remind you guys as Christians here that you would understand this, that God comes to you and he gives to you. It's a work of grace. You don't deserve it. You can't afford it. You could never pay it back, anything like that. So we don't have to follow this example here. Now, what goes on? Well, look ahead to verse number 10 down through 14, okay? Now, the king of Israel can't do anything, but Elisha the prophet hears about this, and Elisha chimes in. Now, Elisha, he sent a messenger to him saying, go and wash. This is to Naaman. He says, go and wash in the Jordan 7 times, and your flesh shall be restored to you, and you shall be clean. So get the picture here. We've got a guy coming down from Syria with a problem. He has leprosy. He comes to Israel looking to be healed. He's bringing some money because he's looking to pay for his healing. The king says, what are you doing? I can't heal you. There's nothing I can do here. Elisha the prophet, the guy that represents God, he gets a hold of this. He hears this. And now he says, send him to me. And now as soon as Naaman comes to him, he's a guy of rank, if you will. Elisha doesn't even go out of his house. He says, just go and tell him to wash 7 times in the Jordan. And there was something that God was up to. Verse number 11. But Naaman became furious, and he went away, and he said, indeed, I said to myself, he will surely come out to me and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God. And here it is, watch, don't miss it, and wave his hand over me and over the place and heal the leprosy from my body. There's an expectation in his mind as to it has to happen this way. And he's ticked off. Verse 12, he says, are not the Abna and the Parfar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? Could I not wash in them and be clean? And so he turned and he went away in rage. And his servant came near and he spoke to him and he said, my father, he says, if the prophet had told you to do something great, would you not have done it? How much more then when he says to you, wash and be clean? And so Naaman, he went down and he dipped 7 times in the Jordan according to the saying of the man of God, and his flesh was restored like the flesh of a little child, and he was clean. Understand this, that healing happened, but it came in a way that he didn't want because it required an act of humility. Joseph's brothers were all there bowing down before him to get food. God had given Joseph dreams back in Genesis chapter 37 when he was still a teenager, pointing forward and telling him what would happen. God sent Joseph ahead, not only for the benefit of the family, but for the preservation of Egypt and all of the surrounding nations that were there. It was an act that God was doing, an act of provision that God was making. And for the remaining 10, 11, if we put Benjamin in there, the tribes of Israel, the sons of Israel, for them to get on board with what God was doing and to watch that healing wash over them as a family, it required an act of humility, that they came there and they humbled themselves before Joseph. They didn't know it was their baby brother. If we can throw up on the screen this for just 1 second here. Can you flip back and throw me up Psalm 133, verse 1 in your thing? You'll back up a little bit in your notes right there. But I want to show the folks this, how special this is. Remember this psalm. How wonderful and pleasant it is when brothers live together in harmony. Remember that. Because the unification that is happening in your life and in my life through the healing that goes on, through this storyline that we're actually in the middle of in Genesis, is that God was still doing a work of healing within this family. Because what these guys did by putting their brother out, selling him into human trafficking, not only did it deceive, and there was a lie that went upwards to their father, but it was a desecration, a very immoral act of what they had done to one of their younger brothers here. And so there's a massive rip within the family. And if you were to take that back to your family, I know you guys to be very real people. What is the massive rip that is within your family? I don't know what that looks like, but I know that as I look at my family, whether it's my side of the family or Jody's side of the family, that we've got some radical rips that are within our family and the extended people within our family, some believers, some not believers. And there's some real challenges to walk through. And yet the promises that we have from God and the things that you and I can take away from the encouragement of the scriptures and the stories of the past is to realize that it may take years before that total healing actually comes about within our life, if we even see it in totality within our days. Now, the story advances on. And if you can just track with me, I'm just giving you parallel applications here, if you will, to understand about healing, okay? In Genesis 44, we move from Genesis 43, we move into Genesis 44 here. And in Genesis 44, as the story continues to migrate forward, in this chapter, we have another brother that steps forward. And another brother steps forward and he says, wait a minute, okay, I'm gonna stand in here. And what goes on? Well, Judah recounts the steps that Joseph gave to them as brothers. He says, you're not gonna see my face again unless you bring the baby brother back.
He showed his love to us.
That's all for today. Join us for our next broadcast of No Greater Love with Pastor Jeff Kramer, weekdays at 10:30 a.m. No Greater Love is an outreach ministry of Westminster Calvary and is supported by listeners like you. If you would like to partner with us, please text GIVE to 720-354-6485. Your donation of any amount helps keep No Greater Love on the air, ministering to thousands across the Front Range. We would like to personally invite you to join us for our weekly worship services, Sundays at 8 or 10 a.m. and Wednesdays at 6:30 p.m. We are located in Westminster, Colorado, on the northeast corner of Church Ranch and Wadsworth Parkway, near the Fossa Fitness. If you're not local, tune into the weekly live stream on our web campus, app, Roku, or on Apple TV. Have you downloaded the free Westminster Calvary app yet? You can stay up to date on upcoming events, join a small group, request prayer, and watch live worship services. Just search Westminster Calvary on your favorite app store today. Lastly, we're a church that's ready to serve you. If we can do so, give us a call at 303-223-4640. And remember, there's no greater love than when Jesus gave up his life for you and me. Thanks, and God bless.